Alright, here we go with Math 1, triangle, congruency, and side, side, side. So we'll just review a little bit. Remember, if they tell us and show us, then we can say, what is CB congruent to? Well, CB is that line right there, and guess what? It's congruent to itself, CB, because we have that CB on both triangles. They share. Okay, 2, we've got an angle SRQ. Angle SRQ is that one right here with the double line. So we match it up here, the double line, so it would be RSF. So angle RSF. Okay, number 3, given the same thing, no lines, but we know that looking at side RQ are the first two letters here, so we know they have to be congruent to DE. So line DE. And number 4, same idea, angle U right there. U is the middle one, G is the middle one, so they're congruent, so angle G. If I'm just given the letters, IJ, it's the last two letters, so I look for the last two letters, WJ. BC, first two letters, look at the first, BW. I could try to draw the triangles if I really needed to, but you don't. Middle one is Q, middle one is E, so angle E is congruent. Then the last one is C, so the last one M. Angle M is also congruent. Okay, and if we need to, we can mark them up, right? Z would be congruent with E. Y, so I do 2 with C, do 2. Then X, 3 on both sides. And then I could go ZY with EC. YX with CX. And then that leaves the last one, XE, with ZX. Looks kind of like a mess, but you do the best you can. Okay, so 10, angle D with angle T, angle E with angle, oh, I did it backwards, R, but it still works, and F with S. Then I could look and say, hey, 1 and 3 would match up with 1 and 3, so TS and DF. Okay, then TR would match up with DE, TR, DE, okay, and then EF with RS. Or number 11, same idea. V would go with B, A with W, and U with C. Then we just match up the sides, so VW, maybe it'll help if I change colors, VA, WU with AC, and then the last one, UV with CB. It's a little better. Okay, 12, we've got H, but which H are we talking about, right? So let's start with G. G would go with S, that's easy enough, right? G with S, there's 3. Side HF would go with HF, so that side's congruent to itself. Then FG would go with FS. Okay, so kind of orienting it this way, it would look like to me that side angle HFG would go with angle HFS. So we would draw that, which means this side goes together with this side and this angle with this angle. Okay, so hopefully that one wasn't too bad. Now let's start writing what would be congruent. So U would match up with V, so I'd go triangle U, something something is congruent to triangle V, something something. Angle 2 is U on this one, angle 2 is V on that one, and then we'd have C with W. For 14, angle E on both sides, so I'd go triangle E, and then F, and then G is congruent to triangle E, then F, then Q. Sometimes you have a triangle that looks kind of crazy like that. Okay, 15, triangle K and X, J and Y, I and W, trying to say it different ways to show you. So I could go triangle I, J, K would be congruent to triangle WYX. Got to make sure you have the order in such a way that it works. You can write it a different way, like I could have went KJI with XYW. That part doesn't matter. So K and M, so triangle K, L, M with triangle M, W, M, W, then V. Alright, so now we're going to talk about what we did in class, okay? And the rule we're looking for is this one. We call it SSS. It stands for side, side, side. Basically, if between two triangles, if we know that their three corresponding sides are congruent, we don't have to look at the angle. We know they're going to be congruent, okay? If they're not, if we don't have the three sides, then there's nothing we can really say about it, okay? So looking at 17, you may say, okay, I've got three things, we call that congruent. But hold on, we're just dealing with sides right now. There's no sides here, so we call it not congruent. There's nothing we know that can say that these are congruent triangles. Let's look at 18. Well, they have one side that's congruent, so there's a side. They also share a side, okay? Whenever they share a side, those sides are going to be congruent. So we have two sides, but do we have a third? No, we have an angle, okay? So that would be side, side, angle, okay? So that one doesn't work, so it's not congruent. And we just write not congruent. Now look at 19. I've got one side, I've got two sides, and they share a side, so that would be my third side. So yes, they're congruent because of side, side, side. And that's all you need to write. If I look at 20, definitely don't have three sides, so we write not congruent. 21, I've got two sides, but not three. I can't assume that that third side's the same, so I have to say not congruent, because I don't know anything about the angles either. 22, now, if you see two angles like this that form an X, those are what we call vertical angles. Vertical angles are always congruent. So I could draw a line here and here, but I still don't have three sides, so I still can't say it's congruent. Okay, look at 23, one side, two side, they share a side, one side, two sides, share a side, 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 side. So yes, by side, side, side. 24, one side, two sides, share a side. So yes, they're congruent by side, side, side. So if I measured those angles would end up being the same exact. Okay. 25, two sides in an angle, not congruent. 27, two sides in an angle. Okay, for right now, that's not congruent. Okay, especially because those angles are wrong. Two angles and a side they share, that's only two sides, so not congruent. And that last one should be pretty easy to see. Now this, we'll learn more rules like the side, side, side one, but for right now, we just wanted to practice. That's the easiest one to just get us in the mood of looking at congruency. Okay, now the last four questions, actually 6 questions, want us to tell you, write down, in order for side, side, side to work, what do we need to have? So we have one side, we have a second side. In order for this to work for side, 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 we need that third side. So we would need to know if EC was congruent to KI. So that's what they're having you do. Figure out which side you need to say is would be congruent in order for this to work. So we've got one side. Now, they also share a side, so that should tell us that's our second. We don't need to write that one down. That one's implied in the fact that they share it. So it would have to be this third side. So WX would be congruent to XH. If those are congruent, then we can say by side, 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 the two triangles are congruent. Okay, 31, same idea, they share a side. So we've got to look at RQ. Is RQ congruent to FP? That's what we need to know in order to say this is congruent by side, side, side. Last one, pretty easy. We've got two sides, so we've got to look at that third side. Is RT congruent to DF? If it is, it works. Okay. These last two, notice that we share a side here. So is DC congruent to QB? That's what we'd be looking for. And we share a side here as well. So is CP congruent to PQ? Okay, if that's true, then yes, we could say by side, side, side that these are congruent. Okay, so once again, we're just looking at two triangles trying to decide if they're congruent. And remember, when we say they're congruent, it means all their corresponding angles and their corresponding sides are congruent, which means they're basically the same triangle that has been moved. Okay. Now we can use just three pieces, all three sides. If they work, I may not know about these angles, but if I know the sides, then I can go and say, yep, the sides are congruent, the triangles are congruent, therefore the angles are congruent. And there we go.